voice down, but I don't know if there's anybody back here, so he's out. I got the Destructor with me. I haven't taken him out on a walk in a long time. I got some interesting stuff. Sorry, I scratched my ear there. Close up of me scratching my ear. I got an interesting story to talk about today, and this goes with the 10th Crusade kind of theme. And basically, it looks like Tommy Robertson was over there in Germany. You hear from him from time to time, stuff like that, but the man's pretty much censored, not allowed to talk freely in his own country, right? So, pretty much his own words. And when Tommy Robertson got arrested for jaywalking, of all things, a couple of years ago, and he was gone away for a couple of months, when he came out, obviously, he dropped being leader of the EDL and stuff like that, because he was getting too popular. He was getting way too much support from the general public, right? And yes, I know some people, we don't like him, he's whatever, but that's, the thing is that it's the movement in itself was getting powerful, EDL, which is still pretty powerful, don't get me wrong. But for those of you who've been following this channel, you've heard me talk about the largest human culture clash in world history that's upon us, and that's basically going to be the 10th Crusade, as we'll call it. When we look at history, and we look at what sparks what, a tree busted here. I'm ready for him. And once I get out a little bit further there, I'll be able to pick my voice up a bit more there. But so just bear with me here. But we see that the formula hasn't changed. The 9 Crusades, the first 9 Crusades, were pretty much a response to Muslim invasions. And there's been over 540 Muslim invasions. It's kind of an ongoing thing. They don't really change their doctrine. That's what I think is the difference between one big difference between Islam and Christianity is that Christians tend to forget, and I'm not claiming to be a big hardcore Christian or anything like that. I'm just saying, historically speaking, it tends to happen that way. I don't know if it was the Third Crusade, which is kind of the most popular, Richard the Lionheart and all that, and Saladin, but I think there was like a 10-year run-up before they actually decided to have the Crusade. So it wasn't just like, okay, yeah, Crusade, let's go. You know, Crusade's number 1, extremely expensive. Number 2, they were very, very difficult, you know, to travel that many men, 12,000 men from England and France and Germany. But you have to understand, and this is one thing that a lot of people, sometimes they catch it, sometimes they don't. But one of the things that they tend to miss in history, typically the other factions involved, which is always the big 3, right? You have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam that are pretty much clashing. Now, right now, what it is you have the Zionist faction of Israel basically creating all this destabilization around the world, which does it with the power of the U.S. and NATO and et cetera, et cetera. Now, I know you're Jew bashing, I'm not Jew bashing. There's a lot of Jews that are against this. I'm not Jewish myself either, but, you know, I do listen to the ones that are telling us what's going on. And Zionism, you know, is kind of the spearhead policies for a lot of the stuff that you're seeing that's creating the catalyst for this crusade, such as mass migration into, into Europe, which is creating a culture clash. Again, the largest one to take place in human history, it's kicking off. Now, usually my predictions are usually a few years behind what actually happens. Sometimes they're within months of what I say. And it's not that and I'm not going to claim clairvoyance here like that. I follow patterns and stuff like that around. Those who follow my channel know what I'm talking about. I connect the dots. And the dots are simple. When the people rally, that's when it just kicks off, bang, there it is. And it looks like it came out of nowhere, but what a lot of people don't realize is that these things brew for long periods of time. This crusade might have even taken 40 years, you know, when we kind of look at the root causes of it, of the open migration policies of all the Western countries, which come in on things like, all the pretty much Zionist policies and stuff like that, the ADL in the States, that type of thing. They're, you know, all their leaders, all they talk about is open door immigration, except for Israel. You know, Israel can be nationalist, Israel can protect its culture and heritage and everything like that, but the European countries cannot. They must become multicultural. If we go to some of the, what's her name there, she's quite legendary, you see her on there. Anyway, you can you can research it for yourself, and you'll just hear it. Like they really believe that under the Zionism that Israel is their state, it's their country, it's their place to be. Ashkenazi Jews, for example, don't believe that. They say that Jews are not allowed to have their own lands. They're not allowed to have their own state and stuff like that, and they're protesting against the Zionists. And those are the good guys. Those are the good guys. We should be listening to them because they can tell us more than just anything about what's going on, because they're in the know. They understand the culture, they understand the history. They also, more importantly, understand the plan, and this is why they're out there. And of course, any Jews that come forward and pull us out, they're considered anti-Semites. They're also considered self-hating Jews, etc., etc. But when you look at the persecution of Jews throughout history, they've pretty much been exiled from every place that they've went. And we're not talking about what you would call the ghetto Jew or whatever, that got no shoes on his feet, can't feed his family, that type of thing. No, we're not talking about those people. We're talking about the ones up and in control. I mean, for example, the Star of David. Apparently, and I'm just starting to look into this stuff a little more myself now, but it doesn't seem, that seems to be a recent phenomenon from the creator of Zionism back in 1916, the Albert Pike crowd, and I think, don't quote me on the name, but I think it was, what was his name? He was a rabbi. I was looking at it last night, but anyway, this guy basically was kind of the founder of Zionism, and the world has been going to hell ever since, right? But the thing is that you have to understand that the Jews are completely outnumbered in this dangerous game that the Zionists they're going to get their own people. We're going to be the last exile of the Jews was in 1991 by the Russians, right? But the Russians threw out the oligarchs. Now the thing is these are the ones that get everybody killed. These are the extreme. These are no less extreme than Muslim jihadists. But to give the comparison, a lot of people, when they hear the term Muslim, the first thing that pops into their head is Durka, Durka, Allah Akbar, Muhammad Jihad, fire the rocket launcher, and terrorism, right? But we know that, yes, even the ideologies are different. There's no difference about that. No, nothing. Everybody knows that they have a different set of values than other, like Western world. But for the most part, most Muslims are peaceful. We know this. But we also know that there is a radical element within Islam. Well, it's the same with Christianity. It's the same with, like for Christianity, you have, for example, the KKK would be considered radical, in that aspect. But yet, those guys aren't a threat to the world. I mean, there might be a slight threat to people in Alabama, but that's about it. And even at that, they pretty much keep to their own. But the Zionists are different. They control the banking systems, which has a lot to do with what's going on. And of course, it's the divide and conquer and the resources and everything and all the wars you see going on right now, which is leading to the destabilization. On behalf of these Zionist Rothschild bankers, Rockefellers for the oil, even though they're moving away from oil, their next big kick is going to be global warming and green energy things. So they're just finding a new scam out there themselves. And have you got your guys up at the top, your Henry Kissinger, Zebru Brzezinski, and George Soros? These guys are probably at the top. These are probably kingpins in the world. And they're also very open Zionists. Now, what does this have to do with the EDL and Pegida, which this video is about? Well, when Tommy Robertson was in Germany the other day, from the making of this video, he was basically there talking about, how he can't speak freely in his own country and the policymakers and stuff like that. And what you're looking at is people rejecting Zionism. It's just a lot of people don't know what it is. They're not educated to it. And of course, it's very easy by yelling racist, bigot, or anti-Semite to keep people from looking into it. That's the whole kicker. And this comes from an Israeli saying, yeah, that's our tactic, by way of deception, is the Mossad, right? So, and again, I don't want to demonize all Jews on this one, because what I want to be now is the voice of reason, so that when you see the clash go on, that you don't see innocent people getting killed for nothing. You don't see innocent Muslims, innocent Christians, and innocent Jews, and everybody else caught in between this culture clash, which is really a rejection of Zionism. In other words, the next exile of the Jews. And yes, it will come on the hands of the slaying of Muslims, so to speak. I've said it, and I'm not saying it to be mean. I've said it for a while, that in the next 10 years, Western countries are going to be dangerous places for Muslim people. So you might want to start working on a plan B. Why? Because it's in the media, it's the sediment is out there. Now the problem is when Islam is exiled from European countries, there's going to be a flight of people out of these countries. There might be flooding in now to get the free stuff, but people are rejecting that. And when the clash starts, it's just going to be too violent for people. They're just going to leave. And when that happens, the next ones on the list are going to be the Jews. And they will add 2015 to the global exile. Where they're going to go, I don't know, because by the time they go to head back to Israel, I think they're going to be entering into a place of smoldering rubble with what's currently going on around their borders. No, the world will not be able to save Israel. Israel is also entering its probably terminal phase without it even realizing it. The uprisings in Israel, the stabbings, the shootings that are going on right now, is the beginning of pretty much an identical look at what happened in Syria. Only this time it's a populist uprising. And I'm not on any one person's side here, but you have to see it for what it is. And what it really is the destruction of Israel beginning. And it's going to play out probably for years. But the thing is that no country can withstand a populist uprising. So the Israelis will not be able to withstand the Palestinian uprising any more than the Muslims will be able to fend off the Crusaders, which will be coming out of the woodwork and uniting. Now, here's the historical reference here. First off, nobody in the tree stand, so I can raise my voice here. I know nobody's hunting deer here. So first off, the first thing that we have to look at is France and Germany. Okay, they were basically not getting along before the Third Crusade. They were having their issues, and a lot of European countries were divided. And then there was this French guy over there in England, and he had like the red hair, and he liked to fight. That Frenchman there, he liked to fight, and he looked like a lion there, so he had a heart of a lion, and that was Richard the Lionheart. And Richard the Lionheart did something a little different. He basically united the Christians. Although, character comparison is not going to be exactly spot on here, but what we're really looking at is Tommy Robertson just pulled a Richard the Lionheart in Germany. EDL, he says it best. It failed. He says we were doing good, we were gaining momentum, and he goes, I failed. I failed. They censored me. They threatened me, which that's what I figured what happened right away. Because I really found it hard to believe that out of nowhere, that he would just, start taking his shoes off, going into mosques and wanting to learn how the other half lived. Now, leopards don't change their spots, and I saw the leopards' spots in Germany, and he said it best. He couldn't speak freely in his own country, which is England, right? And again, I've always said that censorship of freedom of speech is the most dangerous thing to humanity. So what is it about Tommy Robertson that connects to all the people? Well, it's very simple. What he does is, he says, and you can look at this guy. People say, yeah, this guy's been in jail, he's a bit of a fuck-up, probably can't hold a job. He's just that guy that gets it wrong kind of all the time. But he's not out there saying, I want to take over the country. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's not. He never refers to himself for a lot of the stuff. What he says, I want my kids to grow up in, a free democracy. I want them to not be, I don't want Islamification of my country. I want my people to live freely. So it's not about him. It's bigger than him. And he's even said that in himself. And that's what people identify with, is that he's not out there like a politician saying, I can fix this, I can fix that. He's saying, no, we need to band together. He's the common man. He's the people that empathize with him because of that. And in that common man thing, when he's over there in Germany, he says something very interesting. He says, we're going to have a rally, okay? And he says it's going to be big. Whenever it's announced, I don't know when it's going to be announced, I think this is like 6 or 7 days ago. And he says, the EDL, he says, Pegida, he says, is succeeded where the EDL hasn't. The EDL kind of hit a bit of a wall because of the censorship and stuff like that. Now, Pegida, the thing is you're talking, okay, EDL, they get a march. you get quite a few guys there, 3,000, 4,000, which are big numbers, but they're up against a lot stiffer opposition state-wise. They're not allowed to speak freely, right? But Pegida, they get 30,000, which 20,000, 25,000 once a week of people coming out, 25,000, now 30,000, within 2 years becomes 100,000 or more. A lot of Crusaders. Now, in this, the thing about the numbers, which you have to understand is, and how I'm thinking it's going to work, and again, it's pretty much the same way it's worked throughout history, is the average, on the fringe elements, if you were to chop the numbers down to, say, 1,500, I bet you out of that 1,500, 99% of them are going to be ZKL neo-Nazis, anti-xenophobic, all the bad stuff. And they're going to be that. They're going to be they hate everybody, that type of thing. You get up to, say, 15,000, that's probably not going to be the majority of the sentiment. You get up to 15,000, 30,000 people. Those are the common man, the moderates, the people in the center. In other words, he's united the European Crusade. Whenever this rally takes place, all of a sudden, they're all under one banner. You see what I mean? I don't know if it'll be the St. George banner or the Pegida German banner or what banner it'll be under. But it will be a Crusader banner. I don't know what it's going to look like yet. But the thing is the flag won't matter. They are united, just like in the Third Crusade. France and Germany put down their weapons long enough for the Christian boys to get together and have themselves a crusade. Now the difference now is this crusade is a little different. In other words, instead of having Richard the Lionheart and some Templar monks and stuff like that throughout the Crusades and Christian Crusaders, you have neo-Nazis and nationalists. A neo-Nazi being the ultimate fringe of the element, and then nationalists as probably a good backbone of it, and then probably slightly minority of it, but probably more majority than, say, the neo-Nazi faction of it. These things are made up of common people, the moderates. So you have three groups of people that are uniting on a common cause, meaning, I'll give you an example. So you have your neo-Nazi doing a Zeke Hail right beside the rainbow flag warrior, flaming homosexual, progressive person, and these two have just united through a common banner. Completely ideologically different, but one saying, hey, I want to have the right in my country to do a Zeke Hail. The other one saying, hey, I want to have the right in my country to basically not be hung from a crane for being gay. And so that's the common banner. And then you've got everything in between those two, extreme polar opposites, right? So that's the common banner. And the thing is, it's not in one country now. It's going to be throughout all of Europe. In other words, the Crusaders have just united. Now that they're united, what's the rally plan? That might take a year or two to unfold, but I think at that point, you now have the possibility of opposition to the Zionist open border thing. So we're seeing Zionism fail, communism, all forms of communism or Nazism usually end up failing at some point anyway. Now, the problem thing is that a lot of people don't realize, they're too emotionally invested in the ideologies to see how one will work with the other and how one will clash with the other. So in other words, we know that, for example, even some nationalists are kind of, maybe not sympathetic, that might be an over-exaggeration, but they're almost kind of neutral on the Islamic Jihad against Israel. A lot of people are saying, hey, screw Israel, let it burn. That type of thing. Why? Because they're saying, well, the Zionists, and it's a handful of people, maybe we're talking 6,000, 7,000 Zionists around the world that actually have messed everything up. So really, the thing I want people to take out of this is that if we get rid of the Zionists in charge, get rid of the policies, put the bankers in jail, start with the Rothschilds, work your way down. They've been having this plan go on for a long time. If you look at the creation of Israel, the creation of Zionism, and stuff like that, and to the point where Zionism is almost like a satanic belief system. It does double back a lot on the Nazi propaganda of World War II on how it functions. That's why you can say Zionists and Nazis have so much in common, but neo-Nazis are not. They're not even really Nazis in policy. They're just a different. You would call them more nationalist than socialist for sure, and you would definitely not call them Zionist compliant. So, yeah, the terminologies, you have to match it up with the ideologies of the policies that are going on to really understand who is really what. And when you understand that, then you can understand how the bigger picture is going to work a bit. Now, how this is going to turn out, I don't know. I mean, we do know that the Muslim Crusades, of the 500 and some of them going on, that have went on in history, which never get covered. And the irony here is that it's the Zionists that are propping up the jihadist movements around the world, ISIS, etc., etc. When you really look at it, at the end of the day, all the things that are going on in Syria are really to benefit Israel. You know, and it's too much of a diversion to get into. So if you follow this channel, you know what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. You know, U.S. foreign policy, that type of thing, to, you know, destabilize governments and countries to basically on behalf of Israel at the end of the day. So the Israeli lobby and stuff like that, these people are basically, you know, the doers for the Zionist movement. But the thing is that the Zionists are using the Muslim jihadists to invade Europe and stuff like that. I mean, you're already starting to see the attacks. So you're already starting to see the clashes. That said, but now when you have a united Europe under one banner, so to speak, that says, okay, well, this Defense League group is basically going to join up with that Defense League group in a common, you know, which they already were, but this is just kind of makes it a little more official when they're coordinating their, their protests. So when they coordinate their protests, that's when you could say, yes, the Crusaders are united. And when they're coordinated in all countries at the same time, that's the single banner. So it's like, okay, these guys are going to protest this week, these guys are protesting that week. No, it's like we're all coming out unified at once. And the thing is with the Zionists that, and you listen to these Zionists, they talk about it openly. These are very, very evil people, especially the ones in the ADL there in the not the American Defense League, but the American Democracy League or whatever it is, the government faction one, not the nationalist, underground populist movement. But the one in the States there, you could also see it through what do you call it? Oh, somebody just got a deer. Nice. Don't worry, if a deer comes in, I'll throw it at a big spike dart, you know. But you get what you call it, like the SPLC and stuff like that, Southern Poverty Law Center, which pretty much are on the marching orders of George Soros. And even George Soros, who has come out this week, last week, whatever, saying, yes, we're backing the migrant mass migration with his, NGO groups, buying them rafts and whatever have you that we're seeing going on. And people are rejecting this, and they're rejecting their leaders in their country. So that the Europe is ripe for revolt. It's just, it fails if they're not united under one banner. But the thing is with the Zionists trying to use the jihadists to destabilize so that they can get a one world government and martial law everywhere and all that stuff, it just backfires on them in the end. Now, unfortunately, for the Jewish people that are not in on the plan, they're the ones that get thrown under the bus and get, tossed in the ovens, so to speak, which I never call for violence against anybody. But if you can't see this coming, I don't know what to tell you. It's just you're not paying attention. But more and more people will be siding with the Crusader side of it to a point when the clash does take place. Again, it's going to be like 20,000 on 20,000. In the middle of some European country. I'm still predicting England first, but it could very well happen in Germany or Greece, because remember you have Golden Dawn over there in Greece, and of course all the nationalist parties are really, really, really ramping up. Now, Sweden, on the other hand, I don't know how they're going to fare out. You have to understand, Sweden is, their men has been, from what Swedes have been telling me, so they say, yeah, their men are completely demoralized. They're feminized as much as possible. And the idea is that they're not united. They're not the Vikings anymore in the sense of, we have one ideology, we move as one, we think as one. However, the jihadists, they do. You take jihadist A, drop him off anywhere in the world. He can meet up with any jihadist there. They already know what the plan is. That's the thing, right? And that's what you're dealing with. So what you're probably going to see is when this clash takes place. I have no idea when it's going to happen. But it could even happen in Sweden first, because you're already seeing the ultra-nationalists, whatever, coming out and doing attacks. Who's a netter deer? Venison. I'm rooting for venison. I love deer meat. It's like the best stuff in the world. It's hunting season right now. If you're wondering, I'm in Canada, so it's like it's not farmer season. It's actual hunting season. But anyway, with that said, you know, like, people will take out of this video whatever they want. You know, like, okay, well, this guy's just racist and bigot. No, it's we're just watching. History is always unfolding in front of us and stuff like that. And sometimes, if you have the eyes to see and the ears to listen, and you just follow what one side says and follow what the other side says, you can kind of get a sense of what might play out from it. Now, the thing is it's going to get really bloody somehow. We're probably going to see, and I made this prediction in early 2015, the year of terror, and it looks like, yeah, we've been seeing like airliners getting knocked down. Really does seem to be that Russian airliner that just got knocked out of the sky in Egypt there was an ISIS, somebody blew it up from the inside. You know, planes don't just blow up in the sky for nothing. Maybe you could say, okay, well, there was this fire, that fire, whatever. Even with an engine fire, the pilot's going to get out of Mayday. You know, it has to happen pretty damn fast. Jet fuel doesn't burn that fast. Jet fuel is designed to be as unflammable as possible for safety reasons. So, you know, if your wing's on fire, you probably got, you know, you're always going to have enough time to say, oh shit, and call in a mayday. You know what I mean? So, yeah, somebody blew up the plane. Who? Who knows? You know, we'll never know. Like anything, the media is pretty much censored on those things. We'll never know the truth. But there's another aspect that we have to keep in mind is that people on all sides of the fence here are really starting to draw their lines. They're picking their sides. So where the world is kind of still a bit of a gray area, we are going to see more of a black and white polarizing of this group versus that group. How it will play out, how violent it get, countries may even go to war with each other over this in the sense of European countries. I mean, I still predict, when it all comes to a head, maybe at best 20% of each European military stays loyal to the government, because it's the policies that are being rejected. These are Zionist policies. Again, their goal is not to, because their goal is to get rid of the Christians, to dwindle their numbers. Albert Pike talked an awful lot about this. Freemasonry, for example, is... if you remove the Jewish rituals, it's pretty much Freemasonry. Their symbol is, you know, kind of the Zionist Star of David. You know, research the Star of David. It seems to be kind of a bit of a, where did it really come from, you know, kind of thing. It seems to be more of a newer invention. You know, for the state of Israel. We also know that the Rothschilds, although not 100% confirmed, but there are enough statements of, you know, the Rothschilds basically creating Israel, right? And it's the same Rothschildism, you know, that pretty much started this whole kind of New World Order kind of concept. Well, they didn't start it. I mean, New World Order concepts go back 1,000 years, right? 10,000 years, whatever. There's always been a ruling class and a secret ruling class. But with the Zionists, where they're going to lose is that the Christians, they never count on the Christians uniting. You know, they always count on the, you know, Muslims to invade and stuff like that. And you can see in history where a lot of places that the Muslims were led into a lot of places with the Jews. And again, Zionism has been probably coined recently, you know, in this, you know, last past 100 years, but the concept, it goes way back. So it's always that group of the radical, you know, the radical part of the Judaism that seems to lead to these Zionists doing what they do. And they just want to be a ruling class. You know, you got the 13 families, the League of 300, the New American Century, League of Rome, all that. All those things seem to be linked together by the same Zionists factions that have the mass migration thing going on. But the thing is by using progressivism, and, you know, now the new thing is a global carbon tax to really, you know, take the wealth from people, which there is no global warming. You know, there hasn't been any for like 19 years. It is a lie. They manipulate the data. They put like pretty much 2,600 of these sensors near the equator. They put 8 in the Antarctic and about 160 some up in the North Pole, and then they say the planet is getting warmer. You know, and when the data doesn't work out to their hockey curve, Al Gore was supposed to be standing on Mars in the middle of 2013, surface of Mars. When that didn't work, they just keep removing the numbers around to keep showing that there's warming when there's really not any warming. And the warming that there was, when we do get warming, was like so insignificant, it's like 0.85 of a degree or something like that. You know, in fact, it would be a benefit to be if we were like 2 degrees warmer. Anyway, but no, it'd be economical or Eco collapse, no. You'd be growing food. You'd have longer growing seasons. You'd have the global greening. You'd have more CO2 to actually make the freaking trees green again. Or what you call it, the better trees like it. They like CO2. They're CO2 deprived right now, but different topic for a different time. But that said, the Zionists, their end game, I think, in this crusade is basically that they'll wipe out the Muslims later on, like Albert Pike said. So I don't think Albert Pike had a vision. I don't think Albert Pike was a clairvoyant. I think he was just telling us what the plan was. He was in the know. So did his letter ever exist? Well, it's denied that it ever existed. But even the Canadian intelligence guy that said he saw it in the museum there over in England, that he said he saw the Albert Pike letter, and then after it was denied that it ever, he reported on this in 1974, 1976, okay, about 40 years ago, when the globalization plan really started taking, and the mass immigration and the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. That's kind of like the final nail in the coffin for New World Order stuff. They've already got control. They just want to maintain it, but they want to get that flawless victory of, okay, once we dilute all the European heritage away and all that stuff, that's what the unfair campaign is all about. I bet you everybody in the unfair campaign, if you were to look at all these people with their writing on their face, I bet you if you were to look up their, what religion, faith they are, I bet you they're not going to be Christians. Again, I'm not trying to demonize, but again, there's a pattern. It's a plan. It's a plan. And again, not everybody's in on it. And again, there are some fantastic Jews out there. There's no doubt about it. And these people have been trying to warn us, and we got to give them the time of day, because they'll tell us what the plan is, and that's the thing. You got to listen to it. And when they tell you what the plan is, then that's how we counter the plan. It's all about knowledge. That's what this whole crusade can be. Very, very peaceful. Believe it or not. This could be the first one without any blood on the swords. If we use our heads now, think now, rationalize later, right? Don't try to rationalize on the spot, because when it kicks off, it's just going to be, we don't want berserker insanity, completely chaos of people just running around bashing each other over the head type of thing. But we are starting to see it. We are starting to see the violence in Europe and stuff like that. And people don't know what to do about it. But the ones that are doing the political correct thing, well, they don't realize the political correctness is the Zionist agenda for nihilism. Basically, allow your own people to be completely eroded away, and they laugh about it. These world elites laugh about this. They're like, yeah, we're going to promote multiculturalism, which is really multiracial. It's not multiculturalism. I am not against people coming to anybody's one country from wherever, no problem. But there's a difference between having immigration and the door's wide open and come on in because we're going to pay you to, like get down there in the DHS. Again, the people working in these areas, they don't even question their orders. This is the problem. They're like, okay, so you have DHS agents, okay, that are going down into Mexico and South America and busloads of people bringing them up into the States. Well, these DHS agents are terrorists. They're treasonous. They're not following the law. There's human trafficking is what they're doing. You have these political leaders in France that are buying rafts for the refugees to drop. So they can drop rafts over there in Libya for the refugees to jump into, but they can't stop the migration. Please. Hungary seems to be doing okay with that. So you can see, but that's the thing. You are seeing people, they're isolating the Zionism. Now, the Zionists, they never ever factor on that. Yes, they're looking at it and say, well, the European men are basically neutered. The American men, they're neutered. They're politically correct. And the Canadian men, they're neutered. They're politically correct. Now, and I'm not taking pot shots at anybody, but we're talking in the masses here. They'll go along to get along. Here in Canada, we're a lot more obedient, so we accept things pretty much from government without question, right, on the masses. But there are guys out there, that do question things. And they do. But the thing is it's hard to question things when you don't know what the whole story is. So what you need to look into is the creation of Zionism. You need to look into the Zionist agenda for mass immigration. You need to look into all the leaders that are calling for the open borders and the mass immigration. All these guys are in the TTP. All these guys are controlling the media. All these guys are, you can see it. Not all of them are bad. Some of them are just brainwashed. And that's the biggest thing what we're dealing with is brainwashing. And to think that it's a good idea. Now, I get it. There's people out there that need to be helped, actual legitimate refugees. But when we look at the root cause of the destabilization and where it's coming from an area that's being propped up by countries like Saudi Arabia, which the royal family there is pretty much linked to Israel, Zionists. That's why Saudi Arabia and Israel don't fight. Ever wonder about that? Considering the Sunni tribes that are in their number one goal in life is to wipe Israel off the map. The Shia tribes over there in Iran, they don't like Israel very much either. Their goal is to wipe Israel off the map, but for some reason, the Sunnis can keep the Shias from doing that, right? And not that I want to see anybody hurt or anything like that, but you can see the plan is all, Jordan, Turkey, all these guys are supporting ISIS. I mean, Saudi Arabia just bought 13,000 TOW missiles. Like how lucky ISIS was last year to find a Syrian warehouse full of American-made TOW missiles. The Saudis don't need 13,000 TOW missiles. These things, guess where they're going, right? And you can see them; they're showing up all over Israel, right, or all over Syria. Because remember, Syria is a big part of it, but at the end of the day, the goal was in 2004 was for Israel to strike Iran, but they said no. Assad's got like at least 1,000 Scud launchers. They'll wipe Israel off the map with just that, which will give Iran time to fire its rockets at Israel as well. So, in order to take out Israel, or Israel to take out Syria, the Americans have to take out Syria so that the Israelis can take out Iran, which is not going to work. Because remember, the Zionist plan, even though they've been propping up, and it's so much openly admitted now that they've been arming ISIS, and all, they just keep changing the name, moderate rebels, now the Arab Defense Democracy League, or whatever they're calling them now. ISIS just disappeared, but all these new Arab Democracy League guys just kind of showed up. Yeah. It's like, these are all new guys. None of them are from here, but they're all new guys. Yeah. But you get the idea. So they're propping that up, and the byproduct of that is the mass migration flooding into Europe, which, with the Zionists thinking that, okay, well, with the Christians out of the way, because that's who they're really scared of. Be honest with you, like Christianity supporting Israel is really kind of a new phenomenon, maybe the past 150 years, 200 years. Before that, Christians and Jews didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things. Zionism is basically the indoctrination of Christianity to support Israel. But when you look at it, go back a bit further, it's the opposite. The Christians aren't happy with they're not happy with that faction, right? Was it Mel Gibson said something after he did the movie Passion of the Christ, and you see the slag he got for that. That's the trump card Zionism has, but it's wearing out. And he says either you believe the book wholeheartedly or you don't. Okay, and that's fair enough. I'm not going to bash Mel Gibson for that. But what the controversy was about was that he says that it was something along the lines that the Zionists wanted him to put at the end of his movie in the credits something along the lines of, and we forgive the Jews for this, or something along that line. And he wouldn't do it. And of course, we've seen what happened to him, right? So that's the kind of power they have. They can ruin your career, they can do this, they can do that, but they can only ruin you if you care about being called racist, bigot, xenophobe, anti-Semite, and stuff like that. And if you look at who the Semitic people were, they weren't blue-eyed and blonde hair when they first arrived on the scene. The Semitic people are Arabs, basically, and stuff like that when you look at the history. So with that said, I know some people will take offense to that, but you get the idea what I'm talking about. They got hijacked, and then Judaism in itself, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with Jews. I have no problem with Muslims. I have no problem with Christians. But on the other hand, this is nothing new. This is just the 10th version of the last thousands of years of Crusades. And the Christian response is always the same to the Crusades. Yeah, that's what it's always going to be. So my goal is hopefully that maybe cooler heads will prevail. So if you're in one of these Defense League groups, reject the policies, call for the arresting of the actual people that did it, not the persecution of everybody else who hasn't. That said, through knowledge, Zionism will die. Through knowledge. Because if people understand that it's a plan, like anything, you expose the agenda, it goes away. They'll go back to plan B, and then we'll head it off. The next generation will head it off then. But the last thing that the Zionists always consider Again, because their goal is after, it's kind of like the communist doctrine, useful idiots. They'll get the Muslims to invade every country, but they can crack, like ISIS can be, look, the Russians have been in Syria for what, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, not even? Pretty much demoralized, and they're not even really going after ISIS 100% yet. They're going after the supply lines from the Mossad and the CIA and stuff like that. That's what they're going, and the moderate rebels. That's who they're going after first. They are hitting some ISIS targets, but they're really going after, their biggest opposition first to, save Assad, right? Then once they do that, between Lebanon, Iran, Hezbollah on both sides of Lebanon and Iran, and then the Syrian army coming up the middle. Again, it's like I said, whenever Russia gets in there, they're going to put people at one end of the country and they're just going to sweep the whole thing. Well, there's going to be a cleansing, you know what I mean? And those guys, like I said, they're going to be flooding into bordering nations, and they're definitely flooding into Europe now, because the mass migration, 72% of them is not women and children, it's young men of fighting age, and there's already weapon caches being found, one in Sweden at a refugee center, AK-47s, that kind of thing. So basically, we know that these kind of false flag things, the weapons are already there for these guys. And again, these guys can show up anywhere. They're already got a plan. They already know what to do. Not trying to demonize Muslims, but they're being used as pawns in this game as well. And again, willing participant, whatever. You got to factor. There's willing participants on all sides too. You have to factor that in. But the thing is they know that the Zionists know that at the end they'll be able to control, without a doubt, control the Muslims. Or the jihadists. We won't call them Muslims. We're going to call them jihadists. They're going to be able to go for because they're the radical of the element, right? So the jihadists will be able to control those whenever they need to, right? But the thing is, what they really fear is the uniting of the Christian Crusaders, which will be neo-Nazis, and on the fringe element, a good proportion, probably maybe not quite the majority, will be nationalist Europeans, and then the hypermajority will be the common man in the middle. And then on the fringe far end will be the ultimate progressive, whatever, like I say, homosexual, just not wanting to be beheaded in their own country type of thing. That's why you're going to see neo-Nazis marching along with rainbow flags right beside them. It's bizarre, but my enemy is my friend, you know what I mean? That type of thing. So we have to look at it like that. But they are not counting on, they never count on, and this is almost every time, if you look at every time the Jews get persecuted from a place, it's as soon as the Christians unite. It's just something to keep in mind. Again, I'm not trying to demonize anybody, but we're not talking about pretty subjects here. I don't do that. I don't do politically correct. We live in a world that's too dangerous to be politically correct. And it's that political correctness that the Zionists are using to get their agenda through. But when it leaves, it's gone for good, until the next couple of generations, and the Christians forget again, then they have to do this all over again. So I'm just saying, pay attention for once. But what's different now is that with social media, this is where the real difference comes in now, is that we can educate people so that it doesn't get violent. It can still there's going to be violence. The thing is not to go berserker violence so that it's like, again, people, but it's going to happen. Just when you see it happen, protect you, your family. I don't care if you're Muslim, Christian, or Jew, protect yourselves, just don't engage in it, because the battle in itself is just going to be about brutality like it always has been. But what I will say is that if we get rid of the policies, everybody wins. We put the evil people in jail, your George Soroses, your Henry Kissingers, a lot of this stuff goes away. The Rothschilds, start at the top, work your way down. Jacob, Eveline, all those guys running the banking systems. And you just take out these Zionist factions. Take the criticism. When they call you racist and bigot or anti-Semite or xenophobic, just say, okay, yeah, but here's my argument. Don't even try to convince them that you're not racist. Don't do that. Never apologize. What you want to do is say, okay, fine, but just jump right to your point. Now, they're still going to scream and yell at you because you're dealing with brainwashing of most people. They're conditioned to respond to you that way. They're conditioned to say, oh, no, you're racist, bigot, you're wrong. And you say, well, first off, I'm not against you. I'm just for my own people, whatever. I'm for my culture, whatever. It shouldn't be, whatever. But say, keep your argument clean, but understand, brainwashing, okay, is a strange thing. This person is resisting you mentally because they can't handle what you're telling them. You're telling them the world is not flat. Don't start on that one either. I forgot about that. But you're basically, yes, I'm going to get arguments on that one. I know that. But a different topic, different time. But people are going to be, you're arguing with them on that ideology that you're breaking their normalcy bias. So it's not going to hit them right away. Just give them your argument. Kill them with kindness. Be as polite as you possibly can. The reason why is because when they're screaming, they're going to yell at you. They're going to yell at you. Let them yell. Let them vent. But just while they're yelling at you, just try to sneak in as many little things, subtle. And when they go home and when they're thinking, when they calm down, they might start actually looking into it. They might start actually waking up, because that's how it happens. And once a person is woken up on that kind of thing, they're almost subversion proof. They're almost brainwashing proof. They will learn how to question things. Remember, we're dealing with societies around the world that have been not taught to think, but taught to accept progressivism and Zionism and stuff like that subvertively, through what they call Soviet-style ideological subversion. Not that the Soviets are doing it, it's the plan is there. Problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialect. If you understand how those two how subversion programs work, then you'll understand what's going on in the world today, and you'll see it all over the place. You'll say, okay, well, that's a propaganda. That's a propaganda. It doesn't get to the point where you're paranoid and everything is propaganda and everything's a lie. No, but it gives you the ability to question things with a moral conscience without being worried about being stigmatized. Personally, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And more importantly, you hit me with a stick and stone, I'm going to bash you in the freaking head. I can fight back. So, yes, I think the rally of the Crusader has just been called. Hopefully it's not going to be as violent as I'm anticipating. When it's going to happen, look, for those of you who follow my channel, 1 month before the Rigby beheading, okay, I said, with these riots going on and stuff like that, watch out, you're going to see beheadings and stuff like that, and sure enough, it happened. I didn't call the name. I don't know who's going to happen to. I don't know exactly which street it's going to happen on. I don't know who's going to be bashing who over the head with a lamp or a chair, or killing each other with knives and guns. I don't know. But I can tell you, the recipe is there. The stove, we just have to turn on the stove a little higher. It's already there. It's there to see. So when we're looking at it like that, it's not a matter of predicting the future or anything like that. It's just seeing the trend and the pattern, and just, if you see a train going down the track and there's a track out up ahead, it's just a matter of what time it's going to happen. It's just a matter of how fast the train is going. You can make the clear determination that that train, unless it alters its speed and jams on the brakes, it's going to go off the rails. Same thing here. So 10th Crusade, I never thought we'd see this in our lifetime, but we're seeing it. And you could just, it's the footage, it's everything that's kind of, it's there. It doesn't look like it used to, historically speaking. The new banner, basically the Europeans have just called the rally to unite under the Crusader banner. And that's what it's going to be. They're going to be the modern Crusaders. I hope they stay as moderate as possible and use logic and reason rather than death and violence. But freedom isn't free, and history kind of shows that man tends to bash each other over the head and stuff like that. So my goal here is that all sides, whether you're Muslim, Christian, or Jew, is let voice of reason get through, and hopefully peace will, I say it with a grain of salt because it's just going to work out so bad. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just being realistic. I know what the ideologies of all three involved. And it's more than three, but you get the idea about the three major groups involved. So it's like it's going to be a clash. It's going to be brutal. But yeah, we need to get an age of reason. Stop the. Again, we don't want to go into berserker mode because that's just going to be bad for everybody. But anyway, there we go. So if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Fingers getting kind of cool. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Always do the right thing. And have yourselves a great day. G'day, hi, and welcome. It's hunting season, that's why I got to keep my voice down, but I don't know if there's anybody back here, so he's out. I got Destructor with me. I haven't taken him out on a walk in a long time. I got some interesting stuff. Sorry, I got to scratch my ear there. Close up of me scratching my ear. I got an interesting story to talk about today, and this goes with the 10th Crusade kind of theme. And basically, looks like Tommy Robertson was over there in Germany. You hear from him from time to time, stuff like that. But the man's pretty much censored, not allowed to talk in it freely in his own country, right? So, pretty much his own words. And when Tommy Robertson got arrested for jaywalking, of all things, a couple years ago, and he was gone away for a couple of months. When he came out, obviously, he dropped being leader of the EDL and stuff like that, because he was getting too popular. He was getting way too much support from the general public, right? And yes, I know those people, we don't like him, he's whatever, but that's, the thing is that It's the movement in itself was getting powerful, EDL, which is still pretty powerful, don't get me wrong. But for those of you who've been following this channel, you've heard me talk about the largest human culture clash in world history that's upon us, and that's basically going to be the 10th Crusade, as we'll call it. When we look at history, and we look at what sparks what, a tree busted here. I'm ready for him. And once I get out a little bit further there, I'll be able to pick my voice up a bit more there. But so just bear with me here. But we see that the formula hasn't changed. The 9 Crusades, the first 9 Crusades, were pretty much a response to Muslim invasions. And there's been over 540 Muslim invasions. It's kind of an ongoing thing. They don't really change their doctrine. That's what I think is the difference between one big difference between Islam and Christianity is that Christians tend to forget, and I'm not claiming to be a big hardcore Christian or anything like that. I'm just saying, historically speaking, it tends to happen that way. I don't know if it was the Third Crusade, which is kind of the most popular, Richard the Lionheart and all that, and Saladin, but I think there was like a 10-year run-up before they actually decided to have the Crusade. So it wasn't just like, okay, yeah, Crusade, let's go. You know, Crusades, number one, extremely expensive. And number two, they were very, very difficult, you know, to travel that many men, 12,000 men from England and France and Germany. But you have to understand, and this is one thing that a lot of people, sometimes they catch it, sometimes they don't. But one of the things that they tend to miss in history, typically the other factions involved, which is always the big three, right? You have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam that are pretty much clashing. Now, right now, what it is you have the Zionist faction of Israel basically creating all this destabilization around the world, which does it with the power of the U.S. and NATO and et cetera, et cetera. Now, I know you're Jew bashing, I'm not Jew bashing. There's a lot of Jews that are against this. I'm not Jewish myself either, but, you know, I do listen to the ones that are telling us what's going on. And Zionism, you know, is kind of the spearhead policies for a lot of the stuff that you're seeing that's creating the catalyst for this crusade, such as mass migration into, into Europe, which is creating a culture clash. Again, the largest one to take place in human history, it's kicking off. Now, usually my predictions are usually a few years behind what actually happens. Sometimes they're within months of what I say. And it's not that I'm not going to claim clairvoyancy or like that. I follow patterns and stuff like that around. Those who follow my channel know what I'm talking about. I connect the dots. And the dots are simple. When the people rally, that's when it just kicks off, bang, there it is. And it looks like it came out of nowhere, but what a lot of people don't realize is that these things brew for long periods of time. This crusade might have even taken 40 years, you know, when we kind of look at the root causes of it, of the open migration policies of all the Western countries, which come in on things like, all the pretty much Zionist policies and stuff like that, the ADL in the States, that type of thing. All their leaders, all they talk about is open door immigration, except for Israel. You know, Israel can be nationalist, Israel can protect its culture and heritage and everything like that, but the European countries cannot. They must become multicultural. If we go to some of the, what's her name there, she's quite legendary, you see her on there. Anyway, you can research it for yourself, and you'll just hear it. You know, like they really believe that under the Zionism that Israel is their state, it's their country, it's their place to be. Ashkenazi Jews, for example, don't believe that. They say that Jews are not allowed to have their own lands. They're not allowed to have their own state and stuff like that, and they're protesting against the Zionists. And those are the good guys. Those are the good guys. We should be listening to them because they can tell us more than just anything about what's going on, because they're in the know. You know, they understand the culture, they understand the history. They also, more importantly, understand the plan, and this is why they're out there. And of course, any Jews that come forward and pull us out, they're considered anti-Semites. They're also considered self-hating Jews, etc., etc. But when you look at the persecution of Jews throughout history, they've pretty much been exiled from every place that they've went. And we're not talking about what you would call the ghetto Jew or whatever, that got no shoes on his feet, can't feed his family, that type of thing. No, we're not talking about those people. We're talking about the ones up in control. I mean, for example, the Star of David. Apparently, and I'm just starting to look into this stuff a little more myself now, but it doesn't seem, that seems to be a recent phenomenon from, the creator of Zionism back in 1916, the Albert Pike crowd, and I think, don't quote me on the name, but I think it was, what was his name? He was a rabbi. I was looking at it last night, but anyway, this guy basically was kind of the founder of Zionism. And the world has been going to hell ever since, right? But the thing is that you have to understand that the Jews are completely outnumbered in this dangerous game that the Zionists, they're going to get their own people. We're going to be, the last exile of the Jews was in 1991 by the Russians, right? But the Russians threw up the oligarchs. Now, the thing is these are the ones that get everybody killed. These are the extreme. These are